Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We will get started shortly. Give us just a minute to allow everyone to join from the lobby. Right, we still have folks joining, so give us just another minute or so and then we'll get started. All right, everyone, welcome again. We're glad that you have joined us today for this presentation on the subaward application process for Ohio's Grid Resilience Formula Grant Program. My name is Sarah Perot, and I am the director of the Commission's Office of the Federal Energy Advocate. In addition to our important federal advocacy work on behalf of Ohio energy consumers, our office assists the PUCO with the programmatic aspects of the Grid Resilience Formula Grant Program implemented under the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. In July of this year, the PUCO announced its award for years 1 and 2 of the program, which totals over $14.2 million. Before we share additional information about Ohio's Grid Resilience Formula Grant Program, let's go over a few housekeeping matters for today's webinar. First, please be aware that this webinar is being recorded. The recording will be posted within the next day or so on the PUCO's YouTube channel so that it can be viewed by potential applicants, interested stakeholders, and the general public. The slides from today's webinar will be available to view or download on the PUCO's Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act webpage, which you will find at PUCO.Ohio.gov/IIJA. Please note that all attendees have been muted with their cameras turned off. Once we reach the question and answer portion of our presentation, attendees will be able to unmute themselves and turn on their cameras if they wish to ask a question. Finally, if you have technical issues, please use the chat function at any time during the presentation. Next slide. We have several items to cover in today's webinar. We will begin with introductions from the rest of our presenters, all of whom I am fortunate to work with on the PUCO's Grid Resilience Grants team. We will then provide an overview of the Grid Resilience Formula Grant Program and generally discuss the subaward application process. That will be followed by a demonstration of how to submit an application for a subaward. Once we conclude the demonstration, webinar attendees will have an opportunity to ask questions about the Grid Resilience Formula Grant Program and the application process for subawards. All right, next slide. At this point, we are ready for introductions. In case you missed it, again, my name is Sarah Perot, Director of the PUCO's Federal Energy Advocates Office, and now I will turn it over to Matt Corlett.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Corlett, and I serve as Chief Financial Officer for the PUCO and lead the financial management side of the grants program.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Monica Hairston. I'm the Financial Program Manager here at the PUCO. I manage revenue and grants.
And hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Daniels. I am the Grants Administrator for this particular grant.
And finally, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mara McClellan. I am a staff attorney with the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio, or PUCO. I work within Sarah's group, the Office of the Federal Energy Advocate. I work on various federal matters, including federal grant opportunities. And so that concludes our introductions. And then it will be my privilege to start walking you all through just a bit more background on our grid resilience formula grants. So just again, a little bit of background on the funding opportunity. This particular program was created by a federal law called the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA, which took effect back in 2021. The program was designed in that federal law as a formula grant program to be administered at the federal level by the U.S. Department of Energy. The word formula in the grants context means that each state, and for this program, each tribe, is allocated a yearly amount of funding based on a formula. The IIJA prescribed a set of factors to be used by the US DOE in setting this formula. These factors include population, land area, the number of disruptive events and federally declared emergencies, and other factors. Based on this formula, each state gets an annual allocation, but they did not automatically receive it. The head of state or head of government had to designate an entity to administer the program for the state, and then the state had to apply. For Ohio, Governor Mike DeWine designated the PUCO to do this administration. The PUCO conducted a public engagement process beginning in August of last year, which included public hearings to receive input on the PUCO's program narrative. That is the main governing document for the state's program, which was submitted to the US DOE with the application and now governs PUCO's administration of the subaward process. And there is a link there on this slide, and these slides will be posted to our case docket, where you can review the public comments on the program narrative. And just to state, we do want to thank everyone who was involved in providing feedback on that program narrative. After reviewing that feedback and revising the original program narrative, we did submit that along with the application, and that was in April of this year for years 1 and 2 of our federal allocations. The federal government ended up combining those first 2 years into one lump sum that could be applied for with just one application. And then we announced our award from DOE in July of this year, again totaling just over $14.2 million. For additional information on the program, you can visit our IIJA webpage. That should be your one-stop shop, and again, that's linked on this slide. Okay, so again, going back to this program narrative, on our IIJA webpage, you will find there our program narrative. Again, this is the main governing document for the program and should guide potential applicants as far as your evaluation of potential projects and to give you the best sense of what the PUCO is looking for. There are a few things we want to highlight for you that you'll find in this very important program narrative. First are the 5 objectives. The federal law governing this program required each state applicant to set forth 3 to 5 objectives for the state's program. Through our public process, we evaluated the comments we received and chose 5 objectives. Those are improving reliability, enhancing resilience, demonstrating beneficial community impact, improving customer experience, and ensuring project success. The federal law also required us to have metrics by which to measure that the objectives that we've set forth here will be achieved. And so the program narrative sets out a number of specific metrics for each objective. Your applications then should therefore be focused on these metrics so that we can evaluate how your potential project would meet the objectives. Your applications will be then scored based on a weighted matrix set forth again in that program narrative that is going to look at each of the 5 objectives. And just a couple other aspects explained in the program narrative that again, just to highlight for you. The program narrative will include more information on the specific eligible entities and eligible uses for this program funding distribution, and this section of the program narrative will explain that there is a federally required minimum set aside for entities that sell 4 million megawatts or less of electricity annually. And we have calculated, as explained further in the program narrative, that this federal minimum is at 11%. And then finally, there is a cost match requirement for any entity that receives a subaward. This means, and to explain a little bit more, the amount of the match that must be contributed by the eligible entities, those who receive subawards, the amount of the match varies. So for the larger entities, meaning those that sell over 4 million megawatts of electricity per year, it is 100%. And for the smaller entities, and again, that's 4 million megawatts or less, it is 1/3. To give you an example, because this math gets a little, I would say maybe counterintuitive. If you are a smaller entity and you want to do a project that costs $100, you perhaps are looking to receive funding of $75, and your match requirement, the money that you will have to supply, will be $25, because 1/3 of 75 is 25. Now, the math is a little bit more intuitive, I would say, if you're a larger entity. If you want to do a project that will cost $100, you're probably looking for funding of $50, and your match will be 100% of that, or another $50. Again, these are just examples to help illustrate the math for the match requirement. You do not have to apply for a funding amount that will yield 100% of total project cost when combined with your match. You could seek less than that. So those are just a few highlights from the program narrative. Now I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the application process and then turn it over to my colleague Monica Hairston, who's going to walk you through the process in more depth so that you can see the website where you'll be doing those submissions. But some general points before Monica begins. The applications will be submitted on the Ohio Grants Partnership, which is a state grants portal within the Ohio Office of Budget and Management. Applications are due to us by December 1st. Because both the PUCO and, in this case, the US DOE must approve all subawards, we can't give you a time frame for the DOE's approval, but we expect that PUCO approved subawards will be sent to DOE in the first quarter of next year. This is just an anticipated timeline and subject to modification based on how many applications we actually receive. Projects should be of a nature where they will be completed by April 30th of 2028. That's the completion date, but extensions may be requested. They are not guaranteed. And finally, there are a number of federal requirements, just to highlight, that will apply to all subawards. This is not an exhaustive list of the federal requirements that apply, but just some to note. For more information on these, we encourage potential applicants to review the federal funding opportunity announcement. In the federal grant space, these are commonly referred to as FOAs. And now I'm just briefly going to read this list for you and then hand it over to Monica. So again, just a few of the federal requirements to note. There is a US DOE conflict of interest policy. There's the federal Build America, Buy America Act. There is a federal environmental review called a NEPA review, which stands for the National Environmental Policy Act. There are Davis-Bacon Act requirements. And finally, there is an exclusion for certain applications under another program that was enacted by the IIJA, Section 40101C, which is a competitive resilience funding opportunity. And chances are pretty good that if you have not heard of this one, or if this does not sound familiar, you probably did not apply for it. And if you did apply for it, you probably know which one I'm talking about. It's one of the topic areas of the GRIP program. So with that said, I will hand it over to Monica, and then if anyone has questions on anything I went over, we will be happy to take those during our Q&A session at the end. All right, Monica, so I'm going to stop sharing here and then go off camera.
Okay, so to begin your application, you would navigate to grants.Ohio.gov, and then you would click on the funding opportunities here. And then you would scroll that list towards the bottom of the page. You will scroll that list until you find the preventing outages and enhancing the resilience of the electric grid. So you would go ahead and click on that. And thank you, Matt. You can see that the link to the grants portal is in the chat now, for those of you who want to navigate there now. Then you will be brought here, and this is just the overview page. It gives you an overview of the program. I won't read it all to you, but I did just want to point out again, Mara kind of touched on this in her summary, but the project start date, that is, again, it's not definite. We do hope to begin to start sometime in Q1 of 2024, but it's not definite. So that's just the estimated date. And again, this is more overview information. So for financial, again, this just lets you know the match requirements for the larger and smaller entities. And then also the contact information. So if you have any other if you have any other questions, maybe after this webinar, once you've had time to go through the portal and read through the supporting documents, you can reach out to us at grants@PUCO.Ohio.gov. And this is the attachments page and the required documents to be submitted with the application. You will want to download all 4 of these documents. You'll want to begin with the RFA, the request for applications. This will give you the guidance on the other documents that you will need to submit with your application. Once I'm done here, I will turn it back over to Mara, and she will give more detail about the applicant project narrative document specifically. So from this page, once you've downloaded these documents, you'll want to see the button on the bottom right-hand corner for apply for this funding opportunity. You'll want to go ahead and click that to get started. Then we'll bring you to this page here. And as you can see, just give you again the grant ID, the projected start date, the end date, the application due date, which is December 1st. So to the right-hand side, you see this drop down. There is no other option, but you do want to select other from that list. If you've done business with the state of Ohio before, you should have a supplier ID already in our system. So this supplier lookup button here on the left will give you the opportunity, if you don't know it off the top of your head, you could go ahead and use that button to look up that information. And that will automatically pull that information into the application for you. So again, so you would be able to search by either the supplier ID, if you had that number handy, or you can just search by supplier name. So for this example, we're just going to search for the Public Utilities Commission. And as you can see, we have a couple of different addresses that's associated with our supplier ID. So you just want to, if you have more than one, you would want to scroll through the list and select the appropriate address. Now, if you do not have a supplier ID with the state of Ohio currently at this time, that is fine. You can still proceed. You would just need to go ahead and enter your information manually. This is what it looks like if you do select that information from the supplier lookup. It will go ahead and populate that information for you, as you can see here on the right-hand side. I want to bring your attention to the bottom, those two red sections here. So for county and congressional district, you will need to manually select that information from the drop-down list. And as you scroll further down the page, again, there's a place of performance address. Now, if that is the same address that was just input earlier, you can go ahead and check that box and it will automatically populate the information. If that information is different, again, you'll just need to go ahead and enter that information manually. Now, the project description box here is not required, so you can just go ahead and put see attached, or you can leave that blank. Please go ahead and put the amount requested in the amount requested box here to the right. And then you'll want to go ahead and click save. This is saving your application as you're going through. And here you will put your identifying information. So if you have a unique entity identifier and your taxpayer identification number, you would put both of those here. The UEI is a number that is assigned by SAM.gov, and this is required. It is a required field in order to be able to submit the application. And then you also want to go ahead and do your federal transparency assurances on the revenue that you received. If you received any revenue over a certain percentage from the federal awards. For contact details, you will want to go ahead and enter the contact information of the individual that is submitting the application. And if you wanted to, you could still, you could add as many contacts as you like. This one does, of course, require at least one contact, but if you would like to include other contact details, you are able to do that. You could just click the add new contact button and that will allow you to do so. And then you can click save. And this is our questionnaire. These are required questions for you to answer. That's why they're highlighted in the red. So you will need to go ahead and answer these before being able to proceed with the application. Number 5 is not required. It's dependent on what you answer for question number 4. This is what it looks like when you filled out that information. Again, you would like to go ahead and just click save to proceed. And this is the area where you will upload your required documentation to submit with your application. And you will not be able to, you will be able to save your application, but you will not be able to submit the application without the required documentation attached. So this is the screen. Once you have uploaded your required documentation, you are able to verify that. Now you can see in the uploaded file column, last saved by and the last saved date, you can see that there's information there. So that's how you know that the system did take your documents once they were uploaded. So that way you can verify that your documents are attached to your application. Then we come to the submit application page. And so you'll just want to read this information here. And again, there are some assurances that Mara kind of touched on. That wasn't an exhaustive list that you'll be as far as Davis-Bacon and Baba. So, but again, there's more details in the request for application document. So you want to make sure that you read over that carefully. And then you'll just want to go ahead and click agree and type your name. And then you can either at this point save the application as a draft or go ahead and submit the application from this point. Now, let's say that you did just save it as a draft, or if you submitted it, but you wanted to come back into it for whatever reason. So I want to show you how you find that information. You would log back into the grants portal, and then you would come under the grants applications tab. And under funding opportunity, you would go ahead and select the preventing outages and enhancing the resilience of the electric grid. And then you would click search. So then that will show you a list of the applications. If you had other applications for other grant opportunities within the state of Ohio, they would also be listed here. But for this example, as you can see, it does show the draft application that I started. And if you did submit it, that status would show as submitted. And you do have the option to, as an applicant, you can make edits to the application if need be up until the due date, so that it will still be there for you to come in and make edits. As you can see on the bottom left, there is an edit button if you would need to make any edits or changes before the due date. And if you have any problems within the grants portal itself, maybe you're getting some type of error if you're trying to proceed, which could be you maybe did not answer a required question or you did not attach the required documentation. Those would be the two biggest things. But if you receive something outside of that, then you will want to contact OBM directly about the grants portal issue. So you maybe want to take a screenshot of the error you might get and include that in the email and send it to this email address at grants@OBM.Ohio.gov. And then all other questions regarding the application, you again can reach out to us at grants@PUCO.Ohio.gov. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Mara so that she can go more in detail about the applicant program narrative document.
Oops, gotta unmute myself. Thank you so much, Monica. That was a great walkthrough of the application process. So Monica had that screenshot up of one of the documents to be uploaded, and that is a notable one. So I'm just gonna walk through that document just a bit to give you a better sense of what that is and how best to use it. Just bear with me for 1 second while I get the screen share to cooperate. Okay. Great. Can everyone see this document? Maybe Monica, if you can give me
Yes.
thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, let me just enlarge this a little bit. Okay. So this is our applicant project narrative template. It's a template because we put it together for your convenience and to provide some guidance for you in terms of what information and how much information to provide, but also to allow for some standardization for us and for you across the various applications that we'll receive. So you see on here the PUCO letterhead. That's just because it is our template that we made. Feel free to get rid of that and replace it with your own letterhead or logo or whatever you would put on your documents. And then there's a place here for you to put in your applicant name, project name, date of submission. And you will see in this area, there are check boxes regarding confidentiality, and there is more information on that procedure in the request for applications document, or RFA, which is available through, again, our IIJA webpage, your one-stop shop for information on this grants program. So here you will see, and throughout, a number of text boxes on information. And this is our text that we put in. It's sort of instructional to explain what you would put in this text box. You may go ahead and replace that with your own text. And you will see these text boxes are fixed. So again, that's to give you some guidance in terms of how much information we're sort of looking for and some standardization. But if you find that you need a little bit more information in one area more than another, there are some instructions here to, just in case you're finding difficulty with figuring out how to do this in Word, at least in my version of Word, this is the best way to make it so that these text boxes can change their shape. But right now they are fixed. And again, that's for some standardization. So you will go ahead and type your own text in here describing your project. And then much of this narrative document is going to be focused on our 5 objectives that are laid out in that program narrative. And that is linked here for your convenience, the program narrative, but also you can find that on our IIJA webpage. Throughout this program narrative, you will see we have put in some tables for you where we have asked for specific numbers and data. And again, this is just for standardization and to be helpful to you. But if you find that you have another standard way that your organization or your entity typically presents this information, you should feel free to modify that. So just again, walking you through here, you'll see this section. We felt like probably a little bit more information would be needed. So this has some extra space to provide that. And here we're getting into objective number 2, which is resilience. And then metrics for the objective. And you'll see this repeated throughout the project narrative template. And you can upload this when you're finished in that grants portal as either a Word document or a PDF. And then I just want to note that if you are having trouble with the text boxes, or if you have a lot more information that you need to provide, or in some cases we are asking for documents to be provided separate and apart from these text boxes, you are welcome to upload those at the end of the document, either as attachments or additional pages. The main thing I think is that it's clear as to what that information relates to. And so you're welcome to tack on your maps and additional information here to the end of the document. You can see on this page, we have set out an attachment A for the DEIA plan. And that's something that we specifically asked for to be provided as an attachment. All right, so I hope that's helpful information on this one particular document. I'm going to stop sharing. And then this concludes our presentation portion of the webinar. And looks like we have about 25 minutes here for our Q&A session. So at this time, we are going to enable your mics and cameras hopefully they do not turn on automatically. We tested this a little bit. It should be that you will just gain the functionality and have the option to unmute yourself or turn your camera on if you would like to do that for the purpose of asking us any questions. And I see we have a couple that have been posted in the chat already. So I will just go ahead and read those for anyone who's unable to read the chat. So TJ Meadows asked, does PUCO intend to apply a similar formula as used by DOE to allocate money to the states, population, land size, amount of disruptive events, etc., to allocate money to subawardees, thus creating a level of funding a subawardee may be eligible for out of the 14 million available? And then TJ, if you want to come off of mute and explain your question in any more depth, we'd welcome you to do that. I'm happy to try answering this, although I will say I'm not quite sure I completely understand. I'll give you just a minute if you want to come off of mute.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Thanks for the opportunity. I was just curious, given that DOE used the formulaic approach right out of the money that the BIL created to allocate a certain portion to each state, for example, $7 million a year to the state of Ohio. I was curious if PUCO will use some kind of similar formula to allocate how the subawards will be handed out to eligible entities. So in other words, are you going to take into account, for instance, if it's an IOU, the number of customers we serve in Ohio, the amount of land mass we take up in Ohio, et cetera, to create some kind of level of funding that the subawardee would be eligible for? I'm trying to match what would be palatable in terms of an ask versus the funds that are available and how you all plan to deal with that, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Thanks for providing that additional context there. That's at least helpful to me. Sarah, do you want to take a first crack at this? I'm happy to, but I'll ask if you'd like to.
I can jump in and then feel free to supplement, Mara. But I would say my answer to that question is no. We're not using a similar formula to what the US DOE has used to allocate funds to the states and tribes. If you read through the program narrative, I think that should give you a good indication of how we will be scoring applications, and it's largely driven by the objectives and the metrics that are associated with those objectives. So, anything to add? Go ahead, Mara.
No, not really anything to add. That's along the lines of what I was thinking. The formula that was prescribed in the IIJA, or at least the factors that were supposed to be used by the US DOE in their formula allocation, were looking at different things, including federally declared emergencies. And so there wouldn't be an exact correlation or crossover to using that to divide funds up to different parts of the states. I would also add that in terms of looking at different areas of the states where benefits should be, that you can see some language in the program narrative about the Justice 40 initiative and disadvantaged communities. So that will definitely be something that we're looking at. But again, it's a different sort of look than that formula that DOE used for the annual allocations. Okay, and then we had TJ, is that helpful? Do you have anything further?
No, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Our pleasure. And then Jill Wynn had asked a question about, is there a place to upload additional documents? So as I talked about in the narrative template, there is the option to add some items to the end of that document as attachments or further information But then Monica Hairston, do you want to talk about additional uploads?
Yes. Yes, and there is, you are able to upload additional documents in the grants portal with your application. So thank you for bringing that up, because I did mean to highlight that when I went over that slide, so I kind of glossed over that. So yes, you are able to upload additional documents as needed with your application in the portal. That's it. Do we have any other questions?
This is Maeve Mason. I have potentially one. Was curious, I think in the slide presentation, you talked about the fact that you'd be submitting recommendations to DOE, but then they would also be kind of evaluating as well. When at the point when you submit the application or the recommendation, I guess, to DOE, will that be public? I.e., will you be notifying the applicants, or will they not know until it's gone through that kind of DOE evaluation as well?
We expect that the commission will have an order issued at some point. Again, we're not sure exactly of the timing. It's our hope and intention to do our best to have awards determined on our end first quarter of 2024. But as you know, Maeve, the commission does speak through its orders. So it's our expectation that the commissioners will have a voting item on a future agenda to review and consider the projects that the staff would recommend for submission to DOE for consideration. So that's our plan on that. Hopefully that's responsive to your question, but if not, happy to add to it.
Nope, that's helpful. Thank you.
One quick question. This is Ben Wilson with Ohio's Electric Cooperatives. Thanks for all the information. Just a question with regard to the amount of funding and maybe if there's any particular target that PUCO is looking for with regard to individual projects. Certainly on the scale of some of the projects that our co-ops might look at, it could be very large. And so is there any recommendation to swing big with big projects or to try to stay smaller with the amount of requested funding? Because I think that our members could probably find projects large and small that might potentially fit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question, Ben. I'm happy to take a first stab at answering this, and then anybody else, please feel free to jump in. But, I think the federal government gave a lot of flexibility to the states in how to implement this program. In this realm of electric reliability and resilience improvements, a lot of people will say there's a lot to be done, and there are small investments and very large investments that can be done. And so, I think we're expecting to see a range of applications, but I think if you're going to have an application that's going to seek a very large portion of the total amount available, that's going to take up a lot of funding from other projects that we could potentially provide some assistance to in terms of reliability and resilience benefits, and getting that to be a really beneficial program for the state as a whole. So I would say that's my answer to start, but then Sarah and others feel free to provide some color there.
I agree, Mara.
Okay, I appreciate that feedback. I just want to make sure that we give our members, good guidance on how to sort of size these things. And so thank you for that.
Thanks for asking. Good questions. Like we have a question in the chat. Okay, this is from Betsy. Betsy, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name because I'm fairly certain I won't get it right. But it says, can multiple projects be bundled into one application? If not, is there a limit on how many projects can be submitted by one individual applicant? It's an interesting question. I am going to defer to Matt Corlett on this one to see if you want to take a first try at answering.
Sure. I think the short answer is yes, you can submit applications that way. I don't think there's a blanket prohibition on it. I think to the extent that those projects have a lot of nexus to each other, bundling could make sense. The more disparate those projects are, the more it probably makes sense to submit them individually. And I am not aware of any limit on number of applications per entity. If anybody else is, please speak up. But I don't remember reading that in any of the guidance. So.
Yeah, I would agree, Matt. I'm not aware of any limit on the number of projects from the legal side. What I'm thinking is in terms of those federal requirements, including the NEPA review, and if you might be subject to multiple NEPA reviews, that's something that we've been told in working with our federal partners that environmental review on the DOE side can definitely take some time, and that varies. How long that NEPA review will take varies based on the project type. So if you have technically multiple projects, I'm wondering if they would have to have multiple reviews, and if those reviews would involve a different timeline.
So this is definitely something we might need to get more information from our federal partner on.
Yes, I would agree, Monica.
But if, definitely agree with Monica's point. And to your point more, I think, yes, I think to my understanding, that's the NEPA piece is a little bit outside the financial focus of the program. But to my understanding, you're going to need a NEPA review for each project. So the more you bundle that into one application, it's probably not simplifying the effort at that point. It probably would be simpler to submit multiple applications, keep those things separate. So I think back to the idea of, if they're very similar projects with a lot of overlapping nexus, it might make sense. Again, it's all in the details. But if the more those are going to the projects as a whole and the NEPA piece specifically are going to go in different directions, probably would make more sense to split that up into multiple applications. And again, we can get further guidance from DOE on that and provide that back out to the group.
Yeah, and just we might have stated this, but just in case we didn't, our intention, as we've discussed, is to take the feedback and the questions that you all are asking today on this webinar and have a question and answer document, a Q&A posted on our website for everyone's access and information, and to have that continuously updated throughout the process as we continue to get questions and additional information from our federal partners as well. It's like we have about 10 minutes to go if there are any further questions.
And I'll just put the our grants email again. So if you think of any other questions that you have after this meeting, after you've had a chance to review the application and documents again, just go ahead and submit those questions there. And again, we'll gather those questions and we'll post those to our website for the Q&A for everybody to review once we get those all gathered and answered. I think we're good, Mara. No one else is unmuting or coming on camera.
Thank you, TJ. Thanks for your participation. Thanks to everyone for being on here, sharing your time with us and learning about this grant opportunity. It's a very new program for us. We're very excited.
Yes. Looking forward to see what kind of applications we get. So.
What do you think, team? Should we conclude?
I think so.
I
Looks like
think
everyone's
so.
leaving.
Just wanted to
Yeah.
give it a few minutes, make sure we didn't have any lingering questions, but I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I'm not hearing anything from our attendees.
No.
We appreciate the questions today, all.
Yeah.
Right, I will stop our recording.